Is what's happening right now with the COVID-19. There's so many people out there that are afraid of what might happen to them. And for me, it's not a fear for me because of what I've gone through before with, passing away for about 20 minutes and seeing things that most people don't get to see. What I started thinking about after talking to you on the trail that day was how people shouldn't be fearful of death. What it did for me when I was 28 years old was to kind of wake me up and find out where my values are and where I'm sitting with my family and where I am placed with my Father in heaven. At the time I was working for the government, I was working out of town and didn't spend a lot of time at home. And what it did for me was it brought me closer to my family. Here I am, almost 67 years old, and I've talked very little about this because it's meant a lot to me, and it's, other than telling maybe a couple of family members and of course my wife, no one knows about what happened. In my mind, it is very vivid every day. I was up on the ski slopes in Park City and having a great time. We were skiing all day, and I was in the lift line, and all of a sudden a lady came down and she had her poles going every which way and ran into us in the ski line. And needless to say, I skied the rest of the day. When we got through, I took my glove off, and down at the car, my thumb was hanging straight down, and it knocked my thumb completely out of the socket, and I knew I had to have something done. It started to hurt once I got into that warm vehicle.
You skied the whole day with your thumb hanging around?
Yes. Yep. I knew I had to get something done, so we scheduled surgery and got prepped, and what I remember most vividly was sitting in the operating room, and the doctor put a sheet between me and my right hand, and my right thumb was tore down, and there was a nurse in there, and the nurse in there made mention to the doctor that she'd never done a tourniquet before and didn't know quite how to change the valves, and the doctor said that he'd talk her through it. Well, in the situation that you put a tourniquet on right here, and you have two valves. One is to tighten it up, one's to loosen the pressure. And what happened was both of them were tightened to begin with, and the nurse undid the one valve, and the pressure started coming back on again, and she opened the second valve and forgot to close the first valve. And all of a sudden I had the sensation of something going up my arm. It crossed into my heart, and next thing I knew, I was above my body watching the operation. What was unique about it was I wasn't by myself. I had someone right beside me watching. And I don't know if this is normal or not, but I watched every stitch that was put into my thumb. I watched the nurse go running out of the room saying that I killed him, and which was, I'm sure, put a lot of fear in her mind that what she did didn't work. But I sat, and even though I never did see the person next to me, I sat right next to him as if I knew that person. And everything was done through the mind. There was no talking. I could hear what the doctor was doing, but I could never hear mouth to mouth what was being said with the person that was next to me. And we sat there and watched the operation. And I can't tell you how long, because there was no clock on the wall, or I didn't have a watch on. We watched how serious the doctor was about finishing his surgery on my thumb. And I watched him cut me here and here and tear a tendon out. I saw him wrap it around my thumb, and I started watching him put me back together. Something that was supposed to be a very simple operation ended up being not so good in the end. We sat there for a little while, and I can remember I was sitting above. I was laying down, and how you lay out with your arm like this, with the sheet right here. And I was sitting right up here above watching the surgery. And then in my mind, I was told, okay, it's time to go. And I remember so vividly, I could never look back. I was instructed never to look back again. And the next thing I knew, and it was like a twinkle of an eye, I was standing in a field where the person that was with me was right next to me, but I couldn't see him. And I looked over to the left, and there was some great big tall trees. And I remember they were the most unusual looking trees, a long trunk with the leaves up on top. And there were lots of them. And then to the right of that, which would be still to the left of me, was wildflowers, just beautiful wildflowers. And they were up about to my waist. And I just remember looking and seeing how beautiful the flowers are, because it's something that I really enjoy is yard work and gardening. And I just remember the vivid colors were just magnificent. And then in front of me, and then to the right, was tall grass that came up probably just about my waist high. And I was just standing there. And the next thing I knew, the person that had escorted me there was not there anymore, and I was by myself. But it was so peaceful. Everything was really, what I remember so vividly was I could see a long ways to my left. I could see a long ways to my right. I wasn't allowed to look back. But in front of me was at the time it seemed like a cloud. It was just a white cloud. And all of a sudden in my mind, I started watching a video of my life. And I saw it from the day that I was born until I was 28 years old. Everything that I'd done in my life, good, bad, it didn't matter, because what mattered was that's what I was being judged on, was what I had done. And I remember some of it hurt, but some of it made me feel good. But it was what it was. I had no one there to argue with, no one to say, I didn't do that. No, I did it. But there was a lot of things at that time in my life that I wasn't really as on track on my life as I should have been. It was at that time in my life, I was working for the government, for the Postal Service at the time, and it was all about getting ahead, making enough money. And I was working, I remember at the time I was working in Jackpot, Nevada, which is way out in the middle of nowhere. And knowing that everything that I was doing was for myself and not for my family. And I think probably out of all of that I watched, it was, you know, some was good, some was bad, but I knew that I had to do better with my life. I remember all of a sudden just being so peaceful. After it was all over, it was real. Nothing, you know, there's no fake stuff. There was no, you didn't do this or I didn't do that. I did it. It was all about me, and what was so vivid was it was in my mind. I wasn't talking to anybody. I wasn't negotiating. It was all in my mind that I was visualizing. And when I got through, I went, it's over, you know. I knew that I was dead, and I knew I was moving on. I was instructed through my mind, and that person wasn't next to me, but in my mind, to get up and start working forward. And I walked up to this white cloud, and an arm came through, only about this much. And it just came through, and I'll never forget it. It was an arm that was strong. It was somebody that had worked either in the farming industry, where his arms were big and his hands, I remember, were strong. They were bigger than my hands. They were a lot more meaty. And he reached out like this, and I reached towards his hand, and he said, "It is not yet your time. You have more things yet to do." And he pulled his arm back through, and I didn't see it again because of the cloud that was in front of me. And at that time, I went back into my body. The doctor said that there was a war going on inside of my body. The war was that I did not want to come back because it was so peaceful. I remember him saying, "What was going on? Why was you all over the place on that table?" And I told him that I didn't want to come back. It was too beautiful where I'd been. And come to find out, I had a paper on my chest, and it had pronounced me dead for 20 minutes. And I'd been gone. But I was gone in the most peaceful place that I could have ever went. When they wheeled me out, Connie was out in the hallway. She had no idea that anything had ever happened to me. But for 3 days, I've never had so much peace in my life it's unbelievable, the peace that I had for 3 days laying in that hospital bed. And the doctor, it's kind of funny, the doctor kept coming back in and checking on me to make sure I was okay, and was extremely nice to me. It was Dr. Skousen.
Just so you're aware, too, Scott's wife, Connie, is sitting right off screen, so you don't think he's talking to himself.
Oh, no. This is my escort, my wife, Connie. Well, we've been married 45 years, and this is something that I have kept very private and sacred in my life because it meant so much to me. Well, it changed my life. Changed the way I think about things. It changes the way I think about my wife and what we are together, and that we are one instead of trying to be one-on-one. We're trying to be one. At least I am trying. I'm not perfect. I've got a lot to learn in life. My life has taken me in a whole different direction since I was 28 years old. It's kind of brought me closer to my Father in heaven. I know there's a God. I know without a shadow of a doubt. One thing that I can also say is I'm not afraid of dying because I know how peaceful it's going to be. My thumb works today. Very good. I call it my bionic thumb. But I love my family. I love my wife.